Welcome back, America. We're here with our good friend Ben Shapiro. By the way, he's written a fantastic new book, Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America and Her Critics. But before we get to that, Ben Shapiro, I opened the program with a clip of Tlaib, who is, of course, detestable. But she was at this conference, People's Conference for Palestine 2025, Detroit. And you had a real variety of terror-supporting individuals, people with ties to terrorism, people promoting the extinction or the execution of the Jews, the elimination of the State of Israel, coming to the defense of Hamas, but also trashing the United States, trashing the history of the United States, seeking the overthrow of the West of the United States, this fusion of Marxism and Islamism. And it occurred to me, Ben Shapiro, you and I, have people who we thought were conservatives sound a lot like the Marxist Islamists who were attending this event last week, don't they?
I think it's exactly right. Unfortunately, there's a grievance culture that has become the dominant strain on the left that says that all people in the world who are poor, who have bad lives, that is the fault of the West, that is the fault of Israel, it's the fault of capitalism, it's the fault of the Jews, it's the fault of anyone except for themselves. They have no agency, and thus all the systems must be torn down from the rooftops all the way down to the ground. And you see that sort of mirrored on a weird horseshoe part of the right that is now arguing sort of the same thing, that the problems that people have are intractable, that there's a shadowy group that's manipulating all of this, that America actually was never great. America was wrong in World War II. America never landed on the moon. And these kind of two forces are now bizarrely joining hands in the middle. It's very strange.
Do you think there's enough of an effort to push back? I find that conservative groups and conservative organizations that have these weekend events and these seminars, whether they're for young people or think tanks or that sort of thing, they sort of sprinkle these events with these kooks. They sprinkle these events with these American haters who claim to be American firsters and are fake MAGA and even stab the president in the back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an attempt by some of these organizations to, quote unquote, maintain the big tent. But the reality is that, as many have said, the problem with a big tent is that you may end up with many, many clowns inside. And the most fundamental thing is that just because you're saying somebody votes Republican, that does not mean that they ought to be the preacher at the front of the church. They're not the person who ought to be leading the movement if they are spending all day criticizing the president of the United States as covering up a Mossad rape ring or being a tool of the Israelis for hitting an Iranian nuclear facility, a thing he has said literally his entire career that he was going to do. And so it seems to me that if we are to hold anything in sort of reverence, it ought to be the fundamental tenets of the American Republic, which I believe to reside in conservatism. And if conservative organizations are simply going to give up the ghost on that in order to maintain a sort of pseudo-coalition, that is a gigantic moral and political mistake.
I even looked at one organization this weekend that's having a big confab, and they're doing this. They're sprinkling these kooks in with other people. And a lot of people you and I know that run these very rational think groups or think tanks. They write great books. They say great things. I, for one, unless I'm debating them, I would not attend an event like that or be on a stage with somebody like that to give them the legitimacy, in my view, which is what they seek, where they pretend to just ask questions rather than proselytize as they do, no?
I mean, I think that's right. I think that there's a tendency to treat this as, quote unquote, a free speech question. But of course, it isn't a free speech question. No one is saying that the kooks can't have their say. The question is whether they ought to be given the loudspeaker, whether they ought to be treated as sort of the leaders or possible leaders of the conservative movement, even as they go up against President Trump, even as they say things like Trump should be impeached or imprisoned, which is what some of them have actually said from the stage at some events like this. That is a gigantic mistake, because what these organizations were supposed to do was to be what they said they were, thought leaders. They were not simply supposed to mirror the vicissitudes of idiocy online.
When we come back, Ben Shapiro, this idea, you talk about lions and scavengers. There are really two different mindsets in this country, and it's represented by the very people we're talking about, sort of these scavengers who destroy things. And then we have the lions who build things and look for opportunities and so forth. And we see this operating in our society right now, and I think it's a very, very important point. I want to explore that with you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.